Hello and welcome to Raised by Horror, an all-inclusive podcast for grown-up latchkey kids of all genders and orientations whose proxy parenting was done by horror films and books. We have a tantalizing show full of dreadful delights, hosted by our very own Richard Kadri and Violet Blue, and of course me, your production demon, Scotland Simons. Check out raisedbyhorror.com for more info, and now, on with the show. Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Hi. All right. Welcome to our Christmas episode, everybody. This is
Yay.
Baphomet the reindeer, who will probably make a few appearances.
Excellent.
This is oh, it disappears nicely.
Yes.
I had a mishap.
Hello. Hello.
No, you're a
Okay.
great reindeer.
Thank
Getting
you.
started is always hard. So we are Raised by Horror. Welcome. This is our holiday special where we talk about holiday horror and all things holiday horror. Well, mostly films that are holiday horror. We have a couple picked out for you. And of course, there are a lot that we aren't going to get to talk about that are incredible, but we have just a couple of favorites this year that we want to talk to you about. Does that sound about right, guys?
Yeah.
I think so. I think
Okay.
so.
It's actually
trying
one.
to avoid some of the obvious ones and sort of bring up some new ones that you might not have heard of.
Yes. And cast some in sort of a new light as well that I think people might have overlooked.
There's even ones that I like, which is saying something.
All
It's pretty
right.
awesome. It's pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I've been looking forward to this all week. So I'm
Right.
just like raring to go, and I can't wait to see what we get into.
Me too. So
Well,
I want to ask.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I want to know. I mean, because we've been super excited about this episode for a while, and we've been planning it like crazy, and everything down to the backgrounds. Which, by the way, my background is amazing, and Richard made it. It's from his Pulp Sabotage series, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes, I love it. But what I'm curious about is because I was super excited to do this episode because I love holiday horror. Like I love everything about Christmas horror. And but why is that? I feel like it's a thing and a lot of people really like holiday horror, and there's so much attraction to it. There's for a lot of different reasons, and I want to know what you think is the reason people love holiday horror. Richard, what do you think?
I think it's that tension, excuse me, between genuine happiness at the holidays with forced joy at the holidays. That sort of dreadful sense of family and, oh God, I have to be jolly for at least 2 weeks through New Year's. So I think that kind of yin and yang feeling that, I mean, I really love I love some of the dumber things about Christmas. I love dumb Christmas songs. Like one of my favorite Christmas songs of all time is Marshmallow World by Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra on Dean Martin's like 1968 Christmas special. And it's so dumb, and they're both drunk, and it's just brilliant.
Wow.
And at the same time, you can't escape that feeling of that Christmas is also the purge with candy canes.
Wow.
Black Friday sales and family problems and all that at the same time. So I think for me, that's kind of where the holidays and horror come together.
Yeah,
That's
that
fair.
makes sense. Yeah.
I do know that Dean Martin song that you're talking about, and it's absolutely hysterical. Like,
yes.
Oh my God.
You can hear how drunk they are. It's great.
Yes.
Like, it's so great. I don't know. For me, I'm not a fan of Christmas. I don't love it. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, I like the snow. I like cold. Granted, I'm
Mm-hmm.
in a different climate now, so that's a little interesting and strange. Um, I don't mind seeing a few people, but honestly, I don't.
Mhm.
It's still not my favorite. The food can be good, but I feel like you
Mhm.
don't need that holiday to make the excuse of it. So it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like, no, I'm not into it. I'm just not. I'm not
Mhm.
into the kind of forced happiness. I think is what
Yeah.
it
Mm-hmm.
always feels like to me. It always feels like this forced happiness, this excuse for other people to kind of like convey a centralized theme that everyone has to subscribe to. And if you don't subscribe to it, well, you're just a party pooper, you're just a
Mhm.
whatever. And I'm like, that's not fair. There's other holidays that happen at the same time. Um, I like making fun of it. I think the
Mhm.
things I do like is like I like when like shows or media or content kind of gets a little wacky with it and they like oversubscribe to it. It becomes like a different level of art because they're
Mm-hmm.
trying so hard to get into a holiday thematics that it's
Mhm. Yeah.
entertaining to me because it's ridiculous. Um, I do love all of the overtly pagan references that people tend to miss, so that's always fun too. Like the,
Sure.
but I don't know. It's kind of a weird one for me.
Mhm.
I love Halloween. Like that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's my high holy
Halloween.
day. Like
Well, I mean, the
In
70s were great for shows, like you were saying, pushing things too hard. Because I don't know if you remember Paul Lynde. I mean, in the
mhm.
70s, a lunatic like Paul Lynde could get network airtime for like an hour. And he has astonishing Halloween special and he has a Christmas special, both of which you can find on YouTube. And they are both as demented as you would want them to be.
I'm going to bring it back to horror now.
Yeah, sorry.
Um, and because when Richard was talking about the aspects of holiday horror that you were talking about, and because I've been particularly attracted to holiday horror like throughout my life, and I'm not a Christmas person. I'm not a holiday
Mhm.
person per se, but there are things that I totally get about why it's so appealing and why it's exciting and fun because I one thing is that I think we really want to see this holiday perverted because it is crass, it
Yeah.
is
Yes.
exploitative, it's obscene consumption,
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of us are tired of that, and the idea of seeing it sort of perverted in intelligent, playful, and artistic ways that frighten the horses are that's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think also for me, certainly too, that, speaking a little bit to sort of like what Scotland was saying about the sort of folklore, and which we're going to get into in this episode.
Yes.
For me, I've always wanted to see things that have that and tease it out in terms of like holiday horror, because that to me is really appealing, sort of like peeling back the layer of the commercialized happy, everything's going to be fine, you're going to get presents, and the bullshit cautionary tale about, be nice to Santa, like
Mhm.
be good, be a good, whatever person, and then you'll get rewarded, which is kind of that karmic bullshit, because
Yeah.
as a lot of like I'm not a karma person. Like I don't think that good things happen to people that do good things, because I see a lot of bad people getting a lot of good things, and that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So the idea of like, that it's sort of this moral structure of
Mhm.
policing behavior specifically at this time of year. I love the idea of that turning into something, into a horror fest, especially if it's a comedic horror fest,
Yeah.
because that to me just like lightens the whole thing and just turns it on its head. And the folklore aspects of it, like the mythological aspects of it particularly, are something that I, as a folk horror fan, I am overjoyed when I see things that have Krampus in them or things like that, because
hmm
that reminds us of the roots of where these myths and fables come from. And that to me is, they're ugly, they're not pretty,
Mhm.
um they're difficult, they're challenging,
hmm
and they fly in the face of the Coca-Cola Santa. And
I
you
hate,
know,
I hate
right?
that
We all
Coca-Cola
do.
Santa so much.
I think we
I
all do.
hate him.
And just seeing that perverted is fun. It's really,
Mhm.
really fun. And lastly, I'll try not to like soak up too much of this space, but I feel like a lot of people end up going to be with family that they don't want to be with on the holidays.
That.
Yes.
And it's a type of torture that and dread. So a lot of people end up dreading the holidays while everyone's like, oh, it's gonna be fun and happy. And aren't you going to be happy to see your family? And a lot of people are not, or
No.
Mhm.
they're afraid, or it's going to be terrible. And I feel like I can really empathize with the person who has to go into these situations and feels trapped in these situations and is you know praying for the evil Krampus to burst in through the window with an axe and chop up the tree and like make everybody run and scream, anything to end it, just like I totally relate to that. So I think that
Mhm.
there's a catharsis in holiday horror that I think is so healing, and it's so good for our mental health at this time of year that
Mhm.
I'm not surprised that it's such a cult thing, and it's why I seek it out, certainly.
I mean, my background even gave up on the whole holiday as well. So, there's that. And it might just continue to devolve while it's going. I'm just going to roll with it. I'm just going to roll
Yeah.
with it and hope for the
It's
best.
very Christmas.
Yeah, see, it's appropriate. I'll just kind of lean this
Mhm.
way and you can't see it. Um, I think you said my feelings way better than I said my feelings. 110%. Like, I know I'm not the biggest, horror movie person, but out of the horror movies that I do like a lot, they tend to be the holiday ones because I like that
Mhm.
perversion. I like that
Right?
mutation of the thing. I think that's why I even like dressing up and doing whatever, because it's fun to make fun of the thing and turn it on its head.
Yes.
Like that's
Yes.
what's entertaining to me. That's what
Mhm.
makes me feel good about it and allows me to participate at the level that I would like to participate and go, yeah, see, there I am participating, but I'm don't have to do it with anyone else that I don't like. Like,
Yeah,
I think that's great.
absolutely. All right,
And
so Richard.
You were talking about
Oh,
Krampus coming in with an axe and chopping everything up. I always have this vision of the family holiday and whoever's home it takes place in. I always have this vision of an axe hidden behind the sofa. For like, if things get out of hand, if Christmas if Christmas goes wrong, I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix it myself.
yep, I'll save Christmas.
I'll save Christmas.
All right, Richard, let's get going on these films. What's your first film?
My first film is a really creepy little film called Better Watch Out from 2016.
Mm.
It's creepy in a way. There are no monsters. There's nothing supernatural. It's sort of Christmas meets the bad seed in a way.
Mm.
Oh,
We have two teenage boys at the holidays with their babysitter in the house, and they stage a home invasion. A
oh,
masked intruder breaks in and wanders through the house with a shotgun, menacing the place. And the lead boy, Luke, and the babysitter, who was a couple of years older than Luke, maybe actually about 4 years older, hide in his bedroom closet as the home invader stomps around with his gun and his mask.
mm.
And when he finally gets into the bedroom where Luke and the babysitter are hiding, they're really scared, and they're in it's one of those closets with slats so they can actually see out.
Hmm.
And what the babysitter realizes is, wait a second, the home invader has one of Luke's masks on. That's not a home invader. That's his stupid
Oh,
best friend who's faking a home invasion. And what you realize is that Luke has set this whole thing up to try and set up a tense situation so that he can seduce his babysitter.
Ew.
It is. I said it was creepy,
Yeah.
and it really is. And of course, when that goes wrong, then Luke freaks out. You know, he seems like a normal kid at the beginning of the movie, but when that doesn't work out, he knocks out the babysitter, ties her up,
Ugh.
and then plays a series of really cruel mind games.
Oh, wow. It's that young toxic masculinity.
Yes,
Oh.
very much, very much.
That's the bad guy in the film.
You know,
That's
the
the horror.
cliche of the serial killer who kills the neighbor's pets and dissects them. You can see Luke as that kind of kid. I mean,
Wow.
he's really relentless in his awfulness, and the actor does a very good job of playing Luke. The movie, even with all that, the movie has a dark sense of humor at points when the boys kind of act out some of the things that happened in Home Alone, but in a really murderous way. So people do die in this movie, and
so they take it too far.
They take it way too far. I think it's
okay
for a home invasion kind of movie. I think it's creepier than Black Christmas.
Interesting.
Black Christmas is a classic slasher film of, you know, a demented Santa gets into a house with co-eds, starts killing everybody. I avoided it this year because it's kind of obvious. And I think Better Watch Out kind of covers similar ground, but in a much more interesting way.
Yeah.
Also, Black Christmas has 3 versions, and I wasn't going to watch 3 versions of Black Christmas.
It's confusing, right?
Yes. I wasn't going to do that.
Also, fans of Black Christmas will take up arms after you said that.
I'm sorry.
Just so you know. It's got some hardcore fans.
I know. It's a worthwhile movie. I just wasn't going to sit down and watch 3 versions of a film everybody already has an opinion about Black Christmas.
It's true. True.
So Better Watch Out for me was my Black Christmas this year.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I know it sounds relentlessly awful movie, again, with the sexual politics, there is murder in this movie, but there is a catharsis at the end. It's not relentlessly bleak. It's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There is a catharsis that lets you breathe again. So, if I can recommend it, if you want your skin to crawl like it did during other home invasion movies like The Strangers. So if you imagine The Strangers at Christmas, but with 2 demented little boys.
Right.
If you like the sound of that, I think you'll like Better Watch Out.
Okay. Oh, that's great. And what year was that from?
That is 2016.
2016. Okay, yeah. Okay, well that is a perfect segue actually for one of my picks, which is Christmas Bloody Christmas. And it's from 2022, so it's fairly recent. And people have opinions about this film. Just let's just get that out there. And that the film is very much about the fact that people have opinions about horror and other things. And I hadn't heard of Christmas Bloody Christmas until JWZ recommended it to me. And he described it as Clerks meets Hardware. And I was like, you don't say, and had to watch it. Now, let's just be very clear about this one. This is not a complicated film, right? This film is exactly what's on the tin. Basically, the setup is put out there super, super early, and that's just the conceit, and you just end up running with it. And so basically the premise is that the US Defense Department has rejected basically the new version of, they don't say Boston Dynamics dog, but it's basically like robot, enforcer military thing. And it's a Robo Santa Plus, basically. And so Defense Department rejected these. Robo Santas went out to all these different places across the US in toy stores and malls and things like that. And right as the film's beginning, You know, we get these really, actually the intro is really cool because we get these great vintage looking, like VHS vintage looking commercials for holiday horror-esque things.
Yeah.
And one of them is the recall of the Robo Santas. And that, you know, and the pastiche we hear with everything of like, but there have been no incidents reported, right? And so we're instantly set up, right? We're like, oh, we're good. This film's going to be an incident that isn't reported. Yeah, it's mild of the Robo Santas, right? And so that's our setup, right? And enter, we're in a record shop. And it's run by this woman named Tori, and she is a trash talker. Like, if you took a drink, every time she said the word fuck, you wouldn't even make it through the first act. Like, there's no way. You would just be in a puddle on the floor. Done. Absolutely done. And she's hanging out, closing up. It's Christmas Eve. She's with her employee, Robbie, and Robbie's got a mustache and a little bit of a mullet cut going on. And he's kind of hitting on her, and she's, you know, got a Tinder date, and she's just like, yeah, I gotta go. I'm gonna go, you know, but their banter is like nonstop. Like whoever wrote the script and put their banter together, I mean, it's kind of a masterpiece of Clerks style banter. It's kind of amazing.
Nice.
And it's effortless. Their chemistry is flawless. Like the chemistry is just like, I'm going to annoy you. No, I'm going to annoy you. No, I'm going to annoy you. And it's back and forth, but it's also kind of affectionate and it's very playful. So you really get the sense that they've been doing this. They've been giving each other shit for a while. Right. And she's like, you know, her whole thing is like, I just want to go get laid. It's Christmas. I just want to go get laid and then go home and drink and go to sleep. Right? Like, I just want to get fucked up and go to bed is her whole thing. And he's like, well, let me see your Tinder date. Let me see. And he's like, oh. And then he brings up her Tinder date on his phone on YouTube, playing soulful music on a guitar. And he's like, he's got 4 kids. And she's like, why do you have to ruin everything? Anyway, so they keep going. He's hitting on her, right? And she's like, get fucked. There's no way. No. But okay, let's go get drunk. So they go out and they're getting drunk. They stop by her friend is working at the toy store. She's there with her boyfriend. They drink, they're drinking, they're talking shit. And now what's great about the talking shit is that so they're arguing about bands, right? And this is one of the things that like really kind of like got me like emotionally invested strangely in this, because she starts saying things like, okay, bands that started sucking when they cut their hair. And then they start listing all these bands and you're like, oh my God, like they're talking about Metallica. And she says Soundgarden and Chris Cornell, and Robbie's like, what? Super unknown. Why are you out of your mind? And of course, at that point, I'm a Soundgarden fan, so I was like, she better get the axe first, right? Like I was like,
I'm
instantly
offended.
into it, right?
I'm offended.
Right? And I think, yeah. And so, and everything that they're talking about just goes like this. They're just constantly, they're drinking, they're getting high, and they're arguing, and they're fighting, and they're flirting, no matter how much peril they are in, right? So they go see the friends at the toy store. They leave. Those friends are going to bang, and they do. And Tori and Robbie go off to the bar to go close out the bar, basically. And then Robo Santa comes to life. And of course, their friends are banging in the toy store when this happens. And that's when we see one of the first kills in the film, which instantly sets the stage to let you know that all of the gore and the pyrotechnics and everything is over the top. It is not supposed to be realistic. This whole thing is just a fun movie. It's a fun drinking movie. It's dumb, but it's smart at the same time. And it's endlessly entertaining, like the entire time. Even as Robbie and Tori are wasted and walking back to her place where you know they're going to do it. And you know, Robo Santa is meanwhile like now rampaging through the town, and they're arguing about horror movie sequels and which horror movie sequels were the best ones. And like, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. And she's like, take it up with HR, bitch. You know, she's his boss. And you're just like, the whole thing is just like adorable and amusing and strange. And also, it's filmed in 16 millimeter.
Sweet.
And yeah, the whole thing is filmed in 16 millimeter. And all of the lighting, when you look at it, you'll realize all of the lighting is red and green. It's all Christmas lighting.
Mhm.
And it's as you get into the second act, it's completely just psychedelic after a certain point. And you're like, it's a
I love it.
strange trip. And then particularly charming to me was that, yes, they did have sex, and it was completely adorable. And it was absolutely just like sweet and ridiculous. And he was like, he's like, I'm going to go down on that like a Tyrannosaurus. And she's just like, oh my God, someone kill me. Like, and you're like, yeah, someone, yeah, kill him, please. And then at one point too, like, he's like, after they bang, he like hops up in the bed and he turns around and he looks over his shoulder and she's like, I'm getting a drink, but are you inviting me to peg you? And he's like, oh, I'm inviting you. You're just like, what? Oh my God, what is even going on with this film? And then you gotta love it, right? You gotta love it. Anyway, you kind of know how the rest is gonna go. Robo Santa is on a rampage. Robo Santa can't be killed. Robo Santa, is basically the home invasion. And we see a whole lot of people get killed. The cops show up. Tori gets away. The cops don't believe her. She's completely gaslit. And then it ends up, going toward the finale that is going to happen. And it's again, it's hardware. It's not Terminator. But it's fun. It ends in the record shop, of course. And you really get the sense that this was more of a film about relationships and also about someone's love for just this kind of like B-movie exploitation schlock, but without the exploitation, the sexual exploitation that you expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was really fun. And it was originally supposed to be a remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which I think is really interesting.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Did you see it, Richard?
A long time ago. I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean, I don't remember it well, but I know I've seen it.
Okay. It's just a fun rock and roll holiday film. It's not, it's like you were saying about the previous film you're talking about. It doesn't end on a hopelessly bleak note.
Yeah.
It's definitely for, it's for adults, because it's just lots of trash talk, lots of potty mouth. There's sex in it, and it's not terrible sex. It's not moralistic sex. No one dies because they enjoyed sex or anything like that. And it's just kind of a fun, dumb slasher film without a lot of the trappings that I think really are bummers about slasher films. So that's my pick if people want to watch something fun and just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And good luck if you make it a drinking film, because not gonna happen.
See, that's one of the things I thought about it. It is, I think it's a group film.
Yes.
I think it'd be really great with a bunch of people, so you can scream at everything that's going on.
Oh, totally. And virtually great together too,
yes.
For everyone who's doing COVID safe Christmases, like all of us are.
Absolutely.
It's definitely the kind of thing where you would get on the phone with your friend and click play and have a drink and just be like, what are we even doing?
And you mentioned the sex earlier and like it not being exploited. One of the things that impressed me is there are 2 sex scenes, but it's not like about boobs and stuff. It's just drunken fun, but people, it's not like, oh, this is a B movie, we have to have a lot of boobs in it. It's not like that at all. It's just drunk, goofy people messing with each other. And
that are
in the way people do, and
too.
they're really into each other too. Yeah, it's not gross.
Oh, you mean they use sex in a film in a realistic way that's more enjoyable and relatable for everyone to actually connect with? Oh, exactly. Wonder how that works. That's amazing.
It's pretty groundbreaking. Yeah.
This is on my list now because that just sounds hysterically good.
It's just super dumb fun, and at the same time, like, being shot on 16 millimeter and the way that it's lit, and also the performances are fantastic. You get the sense that this is a film that people made because they loved it and they cared about it, and it's a blast. Interestingly enough, it was filmed entirely in Placerville, California,
Mm.
and it only made $140,000.
That's unfortunate.
It is, because it means probably no one got paid, right?
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Unsolicited ad. Go buy this film.
Right? Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that's going to be discovered. It's like it didn't make any money, but over time, I think it's going to become a little cult classic and maybe get reissued, or in a nice edition on DVD or something.
I mean, I hope Blumhouse picks it up for distribution, because they thoroughly roast Blumhouse in the film.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole segment where they're just like, what is it? Do you like those films? I mean, you're just like, oh my God, this was made by horror fans who want to talk some shit about what's going on with horror.
That's
It's
rad.
super fun.
That's so rad.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Okay. I'm excited about that one. I might have to talk to you both about it later and maybe do a little
Yes.
session to watch it together, because that just sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. After this show, or before the show, whatever, go to our Tumblr, go to our blog, because we'll have a list of all these films that we're talking about, and also probably more films too, because there are a lot of films that we aren't going to be able to cover in this that we wanted to. But to what Scotland was saying, this is going to be a great episode for you to make some lists for the holidays. So
Making my list.
enjoy.
Making sure it bleeds twice.
Yes.
There you go.
Richard, you had another film.
I do, from 2020. It's called Hosts, and it is from England. And I said my previous film was fucked up. This is very fucked up too, but not in a psychological way, the way Better Watch Out is. This is a toned down version of Evil Dead, but it told, if you could imagine Evil Dead in a realistic way at Christmas. So it's about two happy families getting together for Christmas dinner. And a lot of the opening is spending time with both families, establishing that these are genuinely good people who all love each other, and not in a creepy Hallmark way. They're just regular families with teasing, and the brother and sister of one family kind of get on each other's nerves, but it's okay because it's the holidays and everyone's together. The younger couple, Neil and Samantha, are as charming as anybody. But something happens. And it's never fully explained, but there's a kind of Evil Dead possession that happens to Neil and Samantha, where their personalities are erased and replaced with vengeful demons. Now, how this happens and where the demons come from is never really explained. There are early references to fracking and the rise of paganism. The fracking is significant because we open up with a shot of something coming up from a long tunnel in the ground. So I think the fracking is more important, because the idea of opening up the earth and letting out things that were always supposed to be locked up.
Right.
But in the end, it doesn't really matter, because they're there and they're looking for blood.
Sounds
so
great.
Everyone gets together. Neil and Samantha go to the older family's home to have Christmas dinner. And it's very heartwarming. Again, the family really loves each other. The mother is having a heartfelt talk with her family. She's just gone through a trauma and is explaining how she's gotten past it, and things are looking better now. She's going to be fine. And the family is so happy and joyous and have all come together. And then Samantha, who is at the kitchen table, Neil is off somewhere, but Samantha, who's having dinner with them, pulls out a hammer and beats mom to death at the table.
Oh my God.
What?
while everyone watches. It's just one of those moments that
Uh,
you can imagine happening because, there were those moments in life where you see something so strange, your brain doesn't know how to react. So you just kind of
yeah.
stand there. The first time I saw somebody trying to steal my car, I just kind of stood there for a minute and go, huh, that's a guy with a crowbar trying to get into my car. And then I finally reacted. And the family's the
Right.
same way. Samantha just spends like a solid minute beating mom to death. And everyone
What?
just sits there horrified and overwhelmed. At which point they start to react. And then Neil comes in with a shotgun. And so everyone settles down again. And
Wow.
what follows are they separate the family into different rooms and torture them physically and psychologically, but mostly psychologically.
Wow.
For instance, they take the brother and sister up into the attic, tie them both up, put the sister in a chair with the shotgun. And by now, we know that Neil and Samantha are demons and horrible people who will do anything for their own amusement. And so they give the shotgun to Samantha and say, you have to kill your brother, or we're going to do unspeakable things to him. And that's the test they give her. And that's,
Mm.
there is a decision that's made, and everyone has to live with it. So,
It's a very Merry
um,
Christmas, is what you're
it's,
saying.
yeah. And
Wow.
there are multiple grisly deaths, as in the Evil Dead, and a huge, wild, surprising ending.
Oh, wow.
I was really pleased how far they took things to unexpected places. There is an unexpected ending, at least for me,
Cool.
and I really enjoyed it. The violence is very real and visceral. The fear is very real. There are family secrets that come out that I don't want to
Mm.
talk about that change the power dynamics within the house.
Ooh.
Interesting.
And the demons just have a great time. I mean, there's such happy demons. Again, as in Evil Dead, the demons are having such a good time with these ordinary people.
They're in their happy place.
They're in their happy place. It's the
Mm-hmm.
holidays. These are joyful, joyful demons. So I really recommend this one highly. If you like real tension, real gore, interesting characters, and
Yeah.
something that's really well written and thoughtful.
Well,
It sounds like an effective drama too.
It is. Oh, it is. It's
Cool.
surprising in that way. It really gets into character. Unlike a lot of these movies, there is real characterization and backstories to these people.
Yeah, nice.
it
Oh,
gives
I'm
me the
excited.
it gives me the vibe of like someone that really needed to work out some of the thematics that we were talking about when we started this episode
Yes.
about like
Yes.
I don't like the family dinner, so like here's my artistic answer to I don't like the holiday
Yes.
gathering dinner. Like that's
I
so on
I
the
think you're
nose and I
right.
love that. Like
Yeah. Perfect. Perfectly
ah
put.
Yeah. Yes,
ah
going mad at the family dinner and just doing
Mm-hmm.
something horrible.
that's
Yeah.
Absolutely.
great. That's horrifically great.
Right.
Oh man. Okay.
So, yeah.
Ugh.
So maybe this is a good time to take a break.
Probably
Okay.
we can pause ourselves here. We encourage you
Hmm.
all at home to hey, this is a great time to get up, go get a beverage. It can be holiday themed if you want. Just,
Hmm.
make wise choices. Um, we probably have. I don't know. But we're going to take a quick break and then we will be right back. Welcome back. We've had a nice little break. We hope you've had a nice little break, or at least had time to gather yourself for the films to come. Yeah, and of course, reindeer time. We've had some reindeer time.
We had some reindeer time, some quality reindeer time.
Baphomet reindeer. I love it.
So good. It's so good.
All right.
Ugh.
I have a film I want to talk about.
Get it.
Okay. So this is a film that I personally think is one of the best holiday horror films ever made. Hands down. And I mean, I am a fan of every aspect of this film. And I know a number of other people are too, but it's not something that a lot of people have seen, I don't think. It's called Rare Exports, and it was made in 2010. It's a Finnish film. It takes place in Finland, in the Lapland, in the far north. And it's a holiday horror film that's also an action comedy, but it is an action comedy horror that is filled with fairy tale wonder. And the comedy is very deadpan. So it's not an overt in your face sort of comedy. It's the kind of thing where you are just finding yourself smiling while these things are happening, even though you're just like, whoa, what is even going on here? So the setup is it's Lapland, it's the far north, and we open up with basically this company that is drilling in the ice in a giant mountain in the Lapland, and they are a UK and American company that you think maybe, oh, they're drilling for core samples or something like that. And we come to find through the initial discussion that Riley, the guy who's in charge of the company that's drilling, believes that it's actually a burial ground, and he's going to plunder this burial ground. And he's also weirdly into the moral policing of Christmas, where he's kind of arguing with his partner, saying things like, you need to be polite. You need to tell the men not to use swear words. This is Christmas. And you're like, okay, buddy.
Gross. Gross.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's kind of got the vibe that reminds me of the priest from Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? He's got that kind of a vibe. And you're like, this is kind of oogie. And they lay charges and they start to blow up the mountain. And while they're blowing up the mountain, we sort of pull back and we see that there are two young boys watching them. And that's Juso, who is our protagonist, and Patari. And Patari is the older one. He's kind of like, he's a boy turning into a man, but you can tell he's like trying way too hard because he's still too young. And he's just like, yeah, I'm the tough guy kind of thing in the friendship. And Juso is the younger one, and he's sort of the softer one. And he's, you can tell he's kind of the pushover. He's probably the shy one, the butt of everyone's jokes. And as they're leaving, while the mountain is blowing up behind them, and they're getting on their snowmobile, sneaking back because they were not supposed to be there watching that. They're sneaking back, and Patari's like, basically like, Juso, you're so dumb. Like, Christmas is fake. The Coca-Cola Santa is totally fake. The real Santa is Krampus, and he's horrible, and he tortures little children. And Juso is like, he's just like, it's just like, it like shatters everything for him. And then as the credits are starting, we see that Juso has gone home, and he's starting to look through books of illustrations of old woodcuts of Krampus, and Krampus putting children into boiling pots of water, and beating them and with a switch, until with like the little cross hatches on their backs of their legs and their butts and stuff like that. And his face is just getting like more and more horrified. And he's got an advent calendar, and we see that it's 24 days until Christmas. And the next morning that we see, there's a fast forward that happens through the film as we get up to the final day. So the next morning that we see him wake up, we realize he really believed everything that Patari told him and everything that he read in these books. And he's like, we see him wake up, but he wakes up, he's sitting up in bed, and he's sitting on books and things, and he's fully dressed, and he has in his hand a ring of keys and bells that are tied to a string, so that if he fell asleep and passed out, he'd drop the keys into a bucket and it would wake him up. So he's been this whole time just white knuckling the fact that he thinks Krampus is going to come get him. And, we see him get up, and we see that he's also got like books packed into the back of his little pajamas so that Krampus can't beat him with a switch back there. And he looks outside his window and he sees that there are 2 footholes, and he's on the 2nd floor, but there are 2 footholes in the snow right outside his window. And he's like, and then goes to his father. His father's a single dad, and his father's just like gaslighting him about this like the whole time. He's like, Dad, were you outside my window last night? And he's like, put your clothes on. Why don't you have your clothes on yet? Like, it's that kind of a thing. And he goes with his dad out for the reindeer hunt. And this is a town that is very far north, and the town depends on reindeer meat. That is what keeps their freezers stocked all winter. It's what keeps everyone fed. This is their sort of like the town's main event. So everyone goes, like all the kids, the dads, the families, they all go to where the reindeer hunt is, where they're going to trap and pen in the reindeer. And they all get up there and they start to see the reindeer coming, and they're like, yes, we're going to have meat in our freezers this Christmas. It's going to be so good. And then there's only a couple of them, and they're like, what is going on? And so they go and they look over the ridge, and it's just carcasses. It's just all these reindeer carcasses, and which I found out later, 198 carcasses to be precise. Hold that thought. So they're like, the townsmen are like, it's wolves, the damn wolves. Like, we got to start setting traps for the wolves. And they're despondent because they're not going to have food for the winter. They go back to Patari's house, or they go back to Juso's house with his dad. And Juso's dad sets a trap, which is basically just a pit with stakes in it and branches over it and a pig's head. His father is the town butcher, and his father has a slaughterhouse that's adjacent to their house. And next morning, Juso wakes up and he sees that the head is gone and something's fallen in, and he goes out there and he's like, Dad, the trap, and goes and gets his dad. His dad comes back and there's a person in the trap. In fact, it's a very skinny, just sort of desiccated, filthy old man with long, stringy white hair, and he's really gross. And he's like, the dad's like, shit, I killed somebody. So he calls up his 2 buddies, who are his hunter buddies, and they tell Juso to go inside. Juso goes inside, and Juso starts like getting worried about his friends and what's going on with his friends and stuff like that. And so he's starting to, you can see he's got a little list of friends that he's calling, and he's like calling their moms, and he's like, hi, is so-and-so home? Oh, he's not. Oh, okay. And, crosses that name off the list and then goes to call the next one. Meanwhile, the hunters, the trio, the dad and his 2 buddies, take the body back to the slaughterhouse. And they're like, what are we going to do with this guy? Like, who even is he? Like, is someone going to miss him? And then he wakes up and he's not dead. And he kind of he scrabbles around, and he bites one of the guys' chunk of his ear off. He's like, very violent. He's a very violent, gross, skinny old guy. And they're trying to get him to talk. They're trying to, and it turns in sort of to this comedic, the trio is, they're trying to be bad guys. They're trying to be like, give us money, and they're trying to speak in English, and it's very bad English. And they're trying to do tough guy English to get this guy to talk and give him some money, or bribe him or something like that. They're trying to extort him somehow. And Juso, knocks on the slaughterhouse door and is like, Dad, and Dad's like, I cannot talk right now. And he's like, no, Dad, I've been really bad. You need to spank me. And his dad's like, wait, what is going on? And he comes outside, and Juso's like, I was really bad. I went up to the mountain and now all my friends are gone and I'm really worried and I'm really scared. And right at that point, the guy, the filthy dude that's inside starts sniffing the air. And he's like, and he smells Juso. And they cannot hold him back. They're doing everything they can to keep this filthy, naked man who's just like, must have Juso. And
Ugh.
that's when they realize something is deeply wrong. The sheriff shows up the next day, or no, actually that evening, and is like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, nothing, totally nothing going on here. Nothing. And the sheriff's like, that's good, because there are weird things going on in the town. And they're like what? And the sheriff says, well, everyone's had their furnaces stolen and their radiators and their hair dryers and just every heating appliance, every appliance that heats things up is gone. And Juice is like, what about the kids? Find out where the kids are. And they start to realize that the children are also gone, and that the children have been replaced with bundles of sticks that are in the shape of children. And here's to where we really start getting into the folk horror roots of Rare Exports, which Rare Exports is entirely a folk horror story. It's actually about the legend of the Yule goat. And in the tradition of the Yule goat, which way precedes the Coca-Cola Santa, is the kind of original Santa. So the Yule goat was actually, like, in the legends, was buried in the actual mountain that is in Rare Exports that they're all talking about, which I thought was really interesting. But this is the kind of Santa way before the Santa that Western people are familiar with. This is the Santa that would come to town and demand gifts. He wouldn't give gifts. He took from you. He was a taker, and very, very the opposite of the happy, joyful, jolly old Saint Nick sort of a thing at all. This was a legend to be feared, and that's the Santa that we're talking about in this film. So the hunters, they decide that they've caught Santa, right? And they're like, okay, let's go find out what happened up on that mountain. So they go up to the mountain where the excavation was going on, and everyone is gone. It's completely empty. There's a giant hole in the ground, and they find information on the company that was doing the drilling and the excavating. So they go back, they dress the old man who is hanging in chains. They wrapped him up in chains. They dress him up as Santa, and they call Riley, who was the guy in the beginning of the movie, who is the one who was like, don't swear. He was the one who was going to plunder the gravesite, right? And they're like, we have your Santa, give us money. And he's like, you have Santa? And they're like, yes, we have Santa. We will give him to you. We want, and they're like, they choose some ridiculous amount, like $85,000, and they're like kind of jostling each other, like, wait, what? Is that enough? I don't know how much that is, and they take this Santa, they put him in a cage, they put him on the back of a pickup truck, and they drive to meet Riley at these hangars, these giant airport hangars. They get there, and Riley comes out, and he gets up to the Santa, and he gets up to the hunters, and he says, that's not Santa. And he starts backing away. And you're like, what's going on? And they're like, yeah, it's Santa. Give us our money, man. And he's like, this isn't Santa. This is one of Santa's elves. And everyone should smile right now and be very nice and be very polite. And no one should use any profanity. And of course, the hunters are like, the fuck is wrong with you? And they start arguing with each other. And then all the lights go out, and all of these old men, like the one in the cage, descend, kill Riley. And it happens very, very fast. The hunters and Juso run to the nearest, biggest hangar that they can find. They run inside, they shut the doors, they turn around, and there is a giant block of ice with two huge horns coming out of it. Like the block of ice is the size of the hangar. And all around the bottom of the block of the ice are all of the heating appliances, like all of the furnaces, all of the dryers, all of the, the ovens that were stolen out of people's houses. And along the bottom, around the bottom of the giant block of ice with the horns coming out of it, are children wrapped in burlap sacks, and they're crying and they're struggling. And you realize this is a sacrifice, that the elves are defrosting Santa, basically. And it's a really evil, big, bad Santa. And the guys, the adults, the three hunters, are panicking and they're freaking out. And they, they're just like, what do we do? How do we, I need to, oh, my son, there's my son. I've got to get my son out of here. And Juso basically does the equivalent of like with a shotgun and is like, I've got a plan. And you're like little softy Juso, right? Like, he's like, this is what we're going to do. And he hatches this crazy plan, this chaotic plan, where he is basically bait for all of the elves. And they make a giant net, they steal a helicopter, they put all of the children. I love this part because it's so just like, oh my God, they use the children as bait too. They took all the kids in the burlap sacks, including Pitari, the little asshole, right? In the net, the helicopter raises them up, and Juso is like on top of it outside. And they basically, and they're also dropping gingerbread on the ground, like gingerbread and gingerbread cookies, to lure the elves out, because the elves are all like they're in the snow and they're in the trees and they're hiding in the bushes, and they're just like, they're totally gross and scary and really freaky. And they have this like hive mind mentality. They like lure them out with gingerbread, and then they bring the kids up in the helicopter, and they basically like lure all of the elves over to the reindeer enclosure. And
now
Juso's
we're talking.
like, yeah. And Juso's like out, the one outside, like hanging on. And he's like, all right, now. And he drops down, all the elves go in, and he like trips the switch and traps them in there. And I mean, if this isn't a heartwarming story, like, I don't know what is. Like,
reindeer gotta eat. Like,
yeah, but it's incredibly filmed. Like every inch of this film is something that it just looks incredible, fantastic, and perfect. And then I'm gonna give this one away. So spoiler alert. One of the final scenes we see are of the three hunters and the elves, which they have dressed the elves up as Santas, and they've got them in a line, and they are training the 198 elves to be mall Santas. And they're like, and they have dolls, and they're like patting them like this. And they're like, no, softer, softer, and one's like gripping it, and they're like, no, release, and these elves still aren't talking. And we see them package them up in crates and start to ship them off. It's their export business.
I don't think that gives it away. I think that makes me want to see it more.
There's so much more to this film that I've left out. Like,
Yeah.
there's just so much more to it. But it's brilliant, and it's that folk horror. It's that thing I love about holiday horror being steeped in folklore and being steeped in myth, and actually being something that has a really horrible and really scary story in its truth and at its core, that has been totally perverted by brands and corporations, and the need to sell things and the need to commercialize our joy. And it basically just like slaps that up front, like, what if that was here today? Like, what if someone woke that up? Like, then what? And it's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's a film I cannot recommend enough. I've seen it so many times. I don't know how many times I've seen it, and I would gladly watch it again, over and over. I love experiencing this film with different people. Yes. And I did find out one really fun fact for those who have seen the film, which I didn't know about. Well, a couple of things. First of all, it was based on 2 shorts, actually. That was based on 2 short films, and one was called Rare Exports: The Official Safety Instructions.
Mhm.
Okay, so safety instructions for your Santas. And the other fun fact I found out was that in the extended scenes of the elves, the scary elves running around and terrorizing and killing, and then and then being herded, this is all happening in the snow. And this was all filmed, if not entirely on location, then definitely it was in Finland, and it's the trees, and it's snowing, and there are lots of night scenes, and these guys are completely naked the whole time. And it turns out all of the men who played the elves were a men's choir in a very small town in Lapland, who the director said were very strangely into playing these roles. They were
Love it.
super duper into it. They really, really wanted to do it. And he said that they spent their entire time on set naked, and they had a room that they would spend between takes, where they would do 20 minutes in the snow, and then they would go into the room for a couple of hours. He said, where they would sit around naked, drink hot coffee, and play cards. And
So
the director called it the elf box.
the elf sauna. The elf sauna.
Yes, it's the elf box.
That's
They go in there
amazing.
and they cook. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did
So
enjoy the fact that because it was a Finnish film, it has that Scandinavian openness,
yeah.
that when you had 100 old men, they were naked. This wasn't CG. This wasn't coy.
Mhm.
It was a herd of old naked men.
Yeah. And it's a comfort with nudity and sexuality
Mhm.
that does not exist in the United States,
Yes.
period. And I read a couple of interviews from clearly American journalists that were just like, oh my God, there were naked men in it. And I was just like, I want to strangle you, person who had this amazing opportunity to interview this brilliant director about
Mhm.
this utterly fascinating film that I will never stop talking about. And all you could do was fixate on your own bullshit, your own baggage about naked male bodies. I was
Yeah.
just like, what a wasted opportunity, you know? But yeah, it's just, and that also adds to the fact that this film feels viscerally real in so many
Mhm.
ways, even though it's, clearly a fairy tale. Or is it?
I
That's the
yeah, there's
question.
so much in this film that makes me want to see it. Just even being little baby bat. I mean, look, anything that's close to my reindeer heart of
Yes.
reindeer getting theirs, I'm 100% subscribed to.
Yes.
So I'm here for this. We need to watch this film,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. I still have questions too. Like learning
Oh
about
yeah.
the 198 reindeer and then the 198 elves. I'm like, wait a minute.
What
Does
is that
that
all
mean they
about?
were, yeah, I don't know.
Ugh,
I know that there was talk of a sequel, but that never came to pass. Obviously, the film was in 2010, but
Yeah.
I think it's never too late for a sequel for something like this. Obviously,
I
like
mean,
it
maybe
could
we have some time.
extrapolate. I mean, you can't kill a Santa like that by blowing it up. Like you just can't, you
Right.
know?
How did it end up in the ice cube in the first place?
Well, I believe it was banished or
Yeah, I
somehow,
think it
right?
wasn't it trapped a long time ago. I think the
I
people
think so. Yeah, I
rebelled
think that's
against it.
Man,
yeah.
so many
Yeah,
questions. Okay, I
and
got to watch this film. It's on my
yep,
Yes.
notes. I'm ready to
yep.
go. I'm very
It's
excited.
fantastic.
Ugh, so good. So good.
So,
Yeah, I think it's my favorite. It's my favorite of the holiday horror films.
oh, fantastic. Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. Me too.
All right, Richard, you're up for the next delicious film to entice us for this holiday.
So mine is called A Christmas Horror Story. It's from 2015. If you remember a film called Trick or Treat, it's a series of related stories all set at Halloween, a little horror film, these sort of intertwined
Yeah, that's right.
stories. This is trying to do that for Christmas. And I don't think it's quite as successful, but the good stuff is really good. There are four main stories. The opening wraparound story is Santa on Christmas Eve up at the North Pole, getting ready, for to put the toys together, and it's a last minute preparations to fly away and bring toys to everyone. But some unknown force, starts turning his elves into violent Romero-like zombies. Although not Romero, these are fast zombies. These are fast,
Right.
evil, mean, tear you apart zombies.
I've seen this one. So yeah, they're just like
they're because they're his elves, there are hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So they're everywhere.
Right. Zombie elves at the North Pole.
Nope.
Up at the North Pole. And Santa starts out looking like the Coca-Cola Santa. That's how he's presented. But the moment things go wrong, Santa just strips down to his fighting Santa. He picks up this, a staff that's a staff you've probably seen in old images of like Saint Nicholas that he walks on. This Santa has a staff. It's a big golden son of a bitch, and he sharpens it, and that's his weapon.
Swole Santa. Swole.
He's kick-ass Santa.
Totally.
And you can see it's not explicit, but you can see the references to Viking Santa in this implication, in this presentation. So he starts killing elves everywhere, and he finally makes it through dozens and dozens of elves, and he makes it down to the stables where the reindeer are, and he's trying to calm everybody, and like, we can still do this. We're still going to pull this together. And then someone starts banging on the door, and we cut to William Shatner as a drunken small-town DJ, playing music and doing announcements on Christmas Eve. And he's just wonderful as this, again, small-town DJ who really thinks he's the shit and is just drinking and giving everyone a hard time. And especially like old dumb TV and radio stations, he has to tease the local weatherman, because it's like, oh, it's snowing on Christmas and it's too cold. And then ha ha ha, what's, Norman, why did you bring this bad weather to us? And Norman the weatherman freaks out, and he just storms out after plastering a handwritten sign against the glass between his cubicle and Shatner's that just says "fuck Christmas." And he takes off, and Shatner has to sort of cover up and just be his little DJ and keep doing happy Christmas announcements. Cut to our next story, which is about some media students who break into a local school that used to be a convent, and they're looking for clues to do a story about two brutal murders that happened in the basement of the convent school a year before. So there were two guys and a girl, Molly. And for all their bravado, they don't really know what they're doing. They're kind of smart-ass teens who get in over their head. And
it's kind of a found footage vibe, like where they're trying to do ghost hunting ish kind of stuff.
It has that feel to it, exactly.
Yeah.
It's that kind of setup.
Yeah.
And so they get locked downstairs, of course, because they're idiots and they're teenagers, and there are things going on that you don't know about. There's a ghost from the convent days downstairs. It's a young woman who was given a really brutal abortion by the nuns, so that she died, the child died. Molly is wandering around. The guys are wandering around. One of them is this really kind of, the sort of sexy macho guy. And then they have the sound guy who's really kind of meek and is in love with Molly, but could never do anything about it ever. Molly becomes possessed by the spirit of the woman who was given the abortion. She alternately tries to seduce the two guys because all the ghost wants is for someone to have her baby. And the mother has to live even if everyone else has to die. And again, I don't want to quite reveal what happens at the end of the story, but the ghost, I'll say this. The ghost does okay for herself.
Now,
I'll just
all these
say
vignettes, don't all these vignettes take place during the holidays too?
Yes, they're
During
all
Christmas?
Christmas stories.
Right,
They're
right.
all Christmas stories.
Yeah, that one's definitely one of the darker ones.
It's the
For sure.
darkest. It's definitely
Yeah.
the darkest of the bunch.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think the least successful. So it's nice that it's kind of upfront and we really have a lot of the great stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
So what follows the convent story is a really compelling changeling story.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's unforgettable. Absolutely unforgettable.
Yeah. A father drags his family to the woods because it's like his great idea is we're going to cut down our own tree in the woods and bring it home.
Yep.
But he's also kind of a show off and a little bit of a dick.
He's pretty macho.
So he drives up the car to someone's land. I mean, the gate is locked, no trespassing sign. His attitude is like, fuck it, he'll never miss one tree. So he drags his wife and he drags his little son with him onto this land, and they chop down a tree. And as they're dragging the tree back to the car, the son disappears. They freak out, run around the woods trying to find him. And after minutes of hysteria, the child emerges from inside a tree. Like there's a big dark opening inside a tree, and the child comes out. The son appears. Mom grabs him. They take the son home and the tree, of course. And they set up the tree, and it's all family happiness. At least that's what the father thinks. What the father wants. The moment the son gets home, he's different.
Yeah, we start seeing signs that something is not right with this kid.
Yeah, he is so hungry. He is so famished. He will not stop eating. They give him spaghetti for dinner, and he will not stop eating. And his mother tells him to slow down. You can't eat that much. You're going to get sick. Dad comes over, tries to take the food away. The kid stabs him with a fork in his hand.
Yeah.
The kid is just not taking, he's not taking shit from anyone. It's a very tense story all the way through.
It's beautifully told too.
It's beautifully told.
Visually, it has so much tension and suspense that, I don't know, describing it, it's hard to do it justice describing it, because it's got a rhythm to it that really makes you feel uneasy, and the performances are incredible.
Yes.
And as things start to go more and more sideways, I mean, it's clear that this is a changeling, but what becomes really the point of tension, at least for me, isn't necessarily as much that, but as much the story then becomes, how are they going to survive this thing that's in their house?
Yes.
Like that was the thing for me, was it went from, oh, it's another changeling story, to, oh my God, they may not make it out alive, and I kind of care about them now. Like this is unpredictable what is
Yeah.
happening with this creature, basically.
Well,
It's the
I think your description does convey the intensity. Like,
Okay, good.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and
Oh
and
yeah.
for those just for those out there that may not be familiar with the concept of changeling, when it comes to horror story, maybe we could give a quick description of that, just like a TLDR for some people that might not know that reference.
Well, a changeling is the child that the fairies steal and replace with a
Mhm.
fairy baby,
Mhm.
so that no one knows it. And so a human family raises a fairy child,
Mhm.
and it can kind of get things right, but you always know there's something wrong with the kid.
Hmm.
And,
And
and
in
the motives shift from story to story.
hmm but it's not the
Ugh.
happy fairies. It's not Disney
No,
fairies.
it's the
No,
it's the
these are
old, it's the
Real
fae
fairies.
culture.
yeah,
Yeah, it's the unseelie court fairies, not
yeah,
Disneyland fairies.
exactly.
The good fairies.
The fun ones.
So as the horror builds, the family dynamic comes apart. That's the other thing for me that I liked about
Yeah.
this is the family starts to crumble before your eyes, both mentally and eventually physically,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where the mother has been in denial all the way through this. And finally, at a certain point, when horrible things happen, she finally gives in and says, "You are not my son," and tries to fix the situation. So
Mm-hmm.
she takes the son back to the woods, trying to find her son. She meets the man who owns the land that they stole from. And he goes, "Yeah, you got fucked, didn't you?
Yeah.
You did the dumb thing, and now you're stuck with this thing that isn't your kid."
Mm.
And he and the mother have a confrontation that's ends in death. I'm not gonna say how, but the mother gets the child back, but is now a murderer. And where do we go from here? That's sort of what fascinated me about the story is we're a happy family again, but where do we go from here? It's my favorite story in the movie because it's
It's
just
unforgettable. Yeah.
everything is broken, but you know, it is that sort of facade of the happy family again.
That's disturbing. I kind of like that though.
It's really good. I think it's the best of the lot.
And
So
how many vignettes are there? I forget.
there's one more, and then we're back to the wraparound with Shatner. So there's
Right.
actually
Okay.
we can't have a bunch of horror stories without Krampus. So we get a Krampus story.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, it's about a family breaking down over Christmas. A husband and his very reluctant family are going to his relatives, his rich relatives, for Christmas because as he plays it up, it's like, look, I got this business and it's a great investment opportunity. And I know I can convince them to give me money to expand. But the relatives are horrible. The matriarch does not want to see him, just tries to get rid of him and the family as quickly as possible. And when the son breaks a little Krampus figure that's sitting on a shelf, matriarch freaks out, throws them
Hmm.
out. And so they're back on the road again. But the car breaks down in the snow. And so everyone has to get out. They have to trudge somewhere. But the son is dragged off into the woods by something unseen. And what no one ever, we know Krampus has arrived and that everyone must pay for their sins. And I mean everyone. Because the mom has a secret, the dad has a terrible secret. The mother gets some redemption by trying to protect the daughter. The daughter manages to struggle her way back to the matriarch's house. And that's where we have the final confrontation with Krampus. And we know who Krampus is and how all of our sins have to be paid for. And it's a really mean, lean story. And I think it's one of the better movie Krampus stories. I've seen Krampus movies where it's just a big monster that wants to kill people. This is vengeful Krampus mixed with the idea of sin and having to repent in the worst way possible. So
I like the idea of the broken figurine too, where it's like that one innocuous act just uncorks the genie from the bottle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just it's the dumb bratty son who does it and is the first to disappear.
Yeah, and you can't put it back.
You can't fix this. You can't fix what's been undone.
Right.
So then we cut back. Then we cut back to Shatner and the weatherman story that wraps up the movie in a really funny and gruesome and awful way, because something terrible is happening at the mall. At the same time, at the North Pole, Santa is fighting off the most terrible thing, the thing that is trying to break into the barn and take him and the reindeer down. And we learn the secret of Santa in his barn, and we learn the secret of the weatherman, what hating Christmas means, and how it wonderfully destroys the world in a way, or a small town at least.
Yeah.
All the while, Shatner is back at the radio station getting drunk and funny and horrible and everything you'd want an amoral Christmas DJ to be. And I have to say, whatever your feelings for William Shatner as a human being, he is incredible in this movie, because he just sits there, doesn't move. He's just at his little DJ desk. So everything is him, his voice, and his drunken personality. And he's a really great way to hold these crazy stories together, especially the last one where he and the weatherman have a reckoning with the town.
Okay, I'm into this.
So it's a lot of fun. I think it's another one kind of like our earlier one where it's kind of a group movie, I think.
Yeah. It's good too, because it's all of these sort of like, it's like a collection of shorts.
Yes.
That are all somewhat connected in one way or another. So it's if you don't feel like sitting down for a full film necessarily, you know, or you don't feel like binging a series, this is like, it's like all these like little bites, little snapshots of stories.
It's a horror snack.
It's a horror snack.
And also, if you've ever want to see Santa drop kick an elf, like
yes.
That's, I mean, this is where you go to see Santa dropkick elves. It's really fun.
I'm 1000% here for Swole Santa, like getting zombies.
Oh, then you're gonna like our next film that we're gonna talk about.
Please bring it to me.
Yeah, which was it's my third and final pick for our show. But it's also Richard's pick. It's everyone's pick, because we love this film. And it's, you know, caveat that it's a pretty mainstream horror comedy holiday film. It is Violent Night. which was made in it's 2022. And it's David Harbour as Santa, who you'll probably recognize from Stranger Things. And it's essentially Santa is real and he stumbles across a home invasion. That's the overarching, but that's not what really is. I mean, there's so many great things about this film. Richard, do you want to talk about the synopsis or do you want me to?
Well, I think you can talk, but the only thing I'd add is Santa's not a happy Santa.
No, that's
Santa's
the
been
thing.
doing this way too long.
Into it.
10,000 years to be precise, according to his timeline in the film. So we open with Dad Jason Lightstone and his wife and their daughter Trudy. And Jason Lightstone he's a rich brat and he wants to get back together with Trudy's mom. They've been estranged, they've been separated, but they're still friendly, they're still friends. They're still on good terms, and they're going to his mom's house for Christmas, for the holiday. And his mom is obscenely wealthy and really just a horrible person. And when they get there, we find out the whole family is just terrible. They're just terrible fucking people. But we get the intro with Jason Lightstone, and interestingly enough, it's funny. It's like when I saw the actor playing him, I was like, wow, why do I think that guy's a pervert? Like, why does my brain just go perv vibes? It's because he's the same actor that played Translucent in The Boys. So if anyone has seen The Boys and remembers the first season, Translucent, the guy that turned invisible and watched everyone in the bathroom while he was naked, and then died from an anal situation. Anyway, that's the dad. And the actor plays the role with such fantastic he's just irreverent. He's just not that much, like, you don't get like a massive ego off the actor. He's really just like, he just really throws himself into it, and his physical comedy is fantastic. Like, you really end up liking him a lot. Even though he becomes a pretty questionable character at some points in the film.
He's
but
weak
anyway,
too. I think he plays him as a weak person, and that I found fascinating. He's a weak guy within his family, and he's weak to his wife. He's weak to the rest of his family. He tries to be good to his daughter, but he is, and the actor plays that really, really well, not being unctuous.
Yeah, he also plays it as someone who's trying, who's really just trying. He's trying, and it's not a try hard situation. It's just someone who's just like fighting a bunch of internal character stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we get the intro with them, and then we go to a bar. Santa's at a bar. He's drinking beer. It's getting close to closing time, and there's another Santa at the end of the bar, and other Santa at the end of the bar is like, late night, ho fucking ho, and they're doing the whole thing. And as our Santa, who is the first Santa that we see, is kind of doing some repartee and some commentary, he's like, yeah, I've been doing this way too long, and we really start to get a sense of, no, he's really talking about actually being Santa. And mall Santa is at the end cracking jokes about kids on laps and stuff like that. And this is the scene where we realize, like, he's really the guy, and he's like, I gotta go take a piss, see you later. He goes out and he goes up to the roof, and the bartender's like, you can't go up there, what are you doing? And she chases him up there, and there's his sleigh and there's his reindeer, and he's like, oh, you gotta crap on the roof like a bunch of fucking pigeons, don't you? Jesus, like, he's like, you're just embarrassing me again. He's got this, like, he's like berating the reindeer, and the reindeer are like basically giving their version of a reindeer middle finger, I think. Like, they're just like, yeah, we're putting up with you too, bud. And bartender runs upstairs, and he knows her name, and he gives her a gift for her kid, I believe. And she's like, wait, what? And he gets on the sleigh and he rides away. And anyway, I'm not going to give away the rest of that scene. It's kind of gross. But Santa goes off, and the Lightstones make it to the Lightstone compound, for their holiday, essentially. And they get there. We meet Jason Lightstone's sister, who is just a hot mess. She's just a hot middle-aged divorcee mess with a young stud boyfriend who's like thinks he's an action film actor, who's big in a few parts of Asia. And I found out later that this character is actually modeled on Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, that's perfect.
And he's just a douchebag, right? He's just like a macho, like, wow, do karate kicks kind of douchebag. And their son looks like Justin Bieber before Justin Bieber looks the way he looks now. And he's all like every 5 minutes the kid's like, yo, TikTok, what's up? And you're just like, oh my God, that kid needs to be punched. Like you instantly are just like, well, I can't stand any of these people. And like Jason Lightstone's sister is abusive to the staff, and the staff who are serving drinks and serving, cookies and food and stuff like that are all dressed up in like holiday outfits and like, little stockings. They're dressed like little elves and things like that. And the mom shows up, and just everyone on the sister side, her boyfriend and her son, they're all just complete suck-ups. And the woman who plays their mom was actually the mom from National Lampoon's The Vacation. And she is just potty mouth. I found out that she has a whole scene where before she even walks in, where she's just like, fuck, fuckity, fuck, and she's saying all this really mean stuff, and then it ends it with, all right, Merry Christmas to you, Senator, bye, and like walks in the room. I found out that was ad-libbed.
I
which
love
is pretty
it.
great. She comes in and like people are sucking up to her, because she's got the money and they want the inheritance or like whatever, like the usual, like trying to get in her good graces, and she's just mean and doesn't care and thinks they're all just complete dumbasses for the most part. And meanwhile, they get through the evening, they go to tuck in the, Jason Lightstone and the mom go to tuck in Trudy, and they I believe they forgot something for her, but he's like, wait, hold on, I've got something, I'll be right back. And he goes away and he comes back in and he's like, ta-da. And Trudy, who's in bed, is like, what's that? And he opens it and it's walkie-talkies, and she's like, why are you giving me walkie-talkies? And he's like, that's a direct line to Santa. You can talk to him. You can ask him for whatever you want. And she's like, I can talk to Santa? I can ask him for whatever I want. Yeah. And they like put her to bed, and she's super stoked. And meanwhile, a home invasion begins. And what comes to pass, without giving too much away, is that essentially a home invasion has been staged with insider threats, and the insider threats are the entire staff. Well, nearly the entire staff, but mostly the entire staff, run by a man who calls himself Mr. Scrooge, played, I believe, by John Leguizamo.
Yes.
And
yes,
all of the staff, all of the bad guys, all the baddies have these rad criminal code names. They're all like Frosty, Peppermint,
Mr. Tinsel,
Ginger. Yes. It's so fantastic. And they're kind of dressed to the part as well. And you really, you understand very quickly that they're mercs, and they're really like the horrible kind of mercs, like the kind of mercs that go in and do really bad things in other countries, kind of stuff like Blackwater kind of shit. And the home invasion starts to unfold. They wake the family up, they bring them downstairs, and they're starting to do okay, we're going to get into the vault. We're going to break into the vault. And the mom is like, the matriarch is like, you're not getting in there. You want to know what happened last time this happened? An extraction team showed up, who are, by the way, on their way. And the kidnappers were never found. Just letting you know about that. And Mr. Scrooge is like, oh, we know, and we've planned for this. And she's like, yeah, well, good luck getting into that safe. And he's like, oh, we've planned for that too. And so they start to basically, they're like, okay, so who do we torture first to get the final bits of code out for the safe? And they pick Trudy's dad. And so they start torturing Trudy's dad by like breaking a finger and stuff like that. And Trudy, meanwhile, is on the couch hiding on her mom. and she's and I left out part of this too, which is that Santa had shown up to their house to deliver presents. And he came in the top, he parked on the roof, came in the top, found the good whiskey, found the Japanese whiskey, had some whiskey, found a massage chair, and passed out on the massage chair while the home invasion happened. And Trudy gets out her walkie-talkie and she's like, Santa, I need your help, Santa. And it's like, and Santa wakes up and he's like, who's this? And she's like, it's Trudy. It's Trudy. I know you don't know me. And he's like, oh, hang on. He's like all on the massage chair. And he pulls out a scroll and it says, Trudy, nice. And then it shows all of these nice things that she's done, like kind to animals, invited the weird kid to the party, always polite, like all of those things. And he's like, yeah, you're on my nice list, Trudy. What's going on? And she's like, she explains there are men here with guns and we're in trouble. And Santa's like, oh, okay, well, hang in there, let me see what I can do. And at that point, one of the home invaders starts getting into the room where Santa is, and Santa goes and hides behind the Christmas tree, and guy comes in with an AK and he's like, fuck's going on in here? And Santa comes out and he's got his bag and he's like, hey man, I don't want any problems. I was just hired for this party and I don't want anything to do with this. And he's like, and the intruder is like, okay, get downstairs with everybody else. And Santa's like, no. I just want to go. Like, I just want to leave. I'm not a part of any of this. I don't want to be part of any of this. And the guy's like, no, get the fuck downstairs, Santa Claus. Like, you're getting down there with the family. And he puts the AK in Santa's face, and Santa says, you don't want to do this. And the guy says, do what? This? And he hits Santa in the stomach with the AK, and Santa goes over. And he's like, Santa's like, you really don't want to do this. And the guy hits Santa in the face with the AK, and Santa grabs it, smashes it in his face. And then we realize at that point that Santa is actually a fucking badass.
Swole Santa.
And he's fully swole Santa. And he just basically takes the guy out in a very long but hilariously protracted fight, where we realize Santa is also maybe still kind of drunk and not entirely in shape. And there's, fighting with Christmas tree and Christmas lights and things like that. And eventually they go out the window, and the guy that he's fighting gets impaled on an icicle, which is a reference to another movie, by the way. There are lots of Easter eggs throughout the entire film. And then Santa, and when the guy went out the window, the AK went off, scaring the reindeer. The reindeer took off, and Santa's like, of course you left, and he's like, God. So he's stuck there without his reindeer. And the film goes from there, basically. So Santa gets back in touch with Trudy, and he's like, where are you? What's going on? And she's like, the bad men are torturing Daddy. Some skirmishes happen, and he tells Trudy to go hide. He's like, I know you know this house like anyone else. Go hide. Go find a place to hide and stay there. Santa will be in touch. And Santa realizes he's kind of stuck. He has to save Trudy. She's on the nice list. And it turns into this longer story where Santa ends up trying to leave, and then ends up with killing another guy, ends up with the walkie-talkie, and talks to Mr. Scrooge and is like, Mr. Scrooge, and he's like, yeah, I'm fucking Mr. Scrooge to you. Because basically Santa to the home invaders is a wild card, someone who's on the property that wasn't accounted for in their inventory of hostages, essentially. And he's causing problems. And at that point, Santa, who was kind of trying to leave, kind of trying not to leave, he looks down and he's bleeding. So he took a hit in his last battle, and there's blood running down his leg. So he goes back to the house, and he goes into a room. And at that point, he takes off his Santa top, and he's absolutely covered in this patchwork of tattoos. They're all Celtic tattoos. They're all Norse. And we really get the sense that these are ritualistic tattoos. They're very old tattoos. And he's very covered in scars. And I wonder too about the tattoos, like, are they sigils that trapped him? Because through conversation, we also realize that he's been doing this for 10,000 years. He's been in a relationship with Ms. Claus for 1,100 years, and they're on the skids. And we're like, okay, how long has he been doing this? So he sews himself together, he patches himself back up, and he has another heart to heart with Trudy, because he's like, I don't know if I can do this. You know, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if I can make this happen. And Trudy talks to him and she's like, why do you, how did you end up doing this? Like, what got you here, basically? And then we get a flashback of Santa, where Santa came from. And he reveals to Trudy that his real name, his original name, was Nicholas the Red. That he was a Viking warrior, a Norse warrior. And he tells her he did a lot of bad things with his best friend, and his best friend was Skullcrusher, his hammer. And he was like, I used to line up heads and I've done a lot of bad things. And Trudy's like, well, maybe you did a lot of bad things so that you can take that skill and do some good things with it. I believe in you. And that's when he's just like, stay put, Trudy. Santa's coming to town. And you're just like, yeah. And yeah, and I want to give away too much, because the scenes that come after this are just, there are some epic fight scenes, some epic battle scenes. There's a new hammer that comes into play. And just the whole thing ends up being just this joyful film with just tons of gore and lots of jokes. Like, it's very comedic, but they're not dumb jokes. They're like, Santa sneaking down the hallway with tinsel to try and get one of the black water to get peppermint, peppermint, codename Peppermint. And he goes by like an automated Santa who's like, oh, oh, oh. And she turns around and he looks at the Santa and he's like, fucking traitor, and like dives after Peppermint. It's like jokes like that where you're like, oh yeah, this has got me.
Also, John Leguizamo,
I know
he's really mean. He's really good at being mean.
He plays a phenomenal great baddie. Yeah. Oh, it's absolutely, yeah. He's believable, and he's just, yeah. And he's constantly toying with the idea of Christmas isn't real, but if you're really Santa, you fucking ruined Christmas by existing.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
There's another twist with the family story that I thought was great, that I don't want to give away, but there's like one more twist to the family and the money and the inheritance that becomes very important later on. So we have Santa, but we also have, we don't forget about how this fucked up family works.
Yeah.
And how conniving everyone is.
Oh, absolutely.
They did seem to like layer bits of the story well. That came across really true. Yeah.
And I think, one of the favorite things to me is the way it ties the myths together, in that this, we can go with, the whole setup, right? Of like, this is actually Santa. He was actually a Norse warrior, that sort of thing. But there's one scene in particular where Mr. Scrooge has Santa tied up and bound in front of a fireplace. And there, I think it's Peppermint and another, I can't remember the name of the other one. It's not Mr. Frosty, but another one. And he's, and the Mr. Scrooge, gives his whole like, this is why I hate Christmas story, like this, let me show you on the Christmas where Santa hurt me, to Santa. And they're like, what's your name? What's your real name? And he kind of looks up and he's all bloody, Santa, swollen. And he starts saying all of these different names for Krampus and Santa and Saint Nicholas. And that's the moment for me where I really feel that this film levels up in a way that others don't, because it takes all of the folklore and the myth, and it brings us, it concentrates it to this point of time that we are in now, showing us that the Santa that we have now is all of these myths and all of these stories. And in that moment, all of them are true. And it's powerful. It's a powerful moment, and it anchors all of the emotionality of the film to a point where you feel like it's timeless and you're invested. And it sings. The film really sings. And I think it got, it got a lot of press. It had a huge release. It was very popular, but I think a lot of the really important parts of it, the things that matter the most in this film, were glossed over. I think it was one of the larger outlets, I don't know if it was NYT or Atlantic or something like that, were like, do we really need a violent Santa story? And of course, like, that's a dumb question.
Yeah, we do.
And that
we always
shows
need
me
one.
right? But it shows me they totally missed the point of a lot of what was going on in the background of this film, that it's not a simple story, but it's also a very timeless story.
Yeah. And it's about redemption for everyone, including Santa.
Yes. Yes.
I'm
And it's
not
touching.
surprised. Yeah, I'm
It's
like not
touching too.
surprised.
It's so touching. Yeah.
Santa and the little girl are so great together.
Yeah, their relationship and their chemistry is fantastic, and it never feels weird. It never feels sappy or saccharine or creepy or anything like that. It just feels a little bit like a buddy film in a way.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I did find out interestingly though, the director, Tommy Borcola, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. He directed Dead Snow.
Oh, that's great.
Right?
I didn't realize that. That's great. That's a great leap.
Yeah, who doesn't love, dead Nazi zombies getting killed?
Yes.
Like, it's a fun one. It's another horror comedy.
Yeah, he also did Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, Dead Snow 2, Red versus Dead.
Yeah, I saw that one. That was pretty good too.
I recall the Hansel and Gretel one isn't all that great. It was sort of
that I think he just assisted on that in his defense.
Oh, okay.
Not that I know him well enough to defend him, but
okay.
He did direct
his baby.
Yeah, he did direct something called Spermageddon, or it's on its way out. I think that's coming up.
That I don't know about. I'll have to look for that one.
I might not look for that one.
No, probably not for me.
Well, I at least want to know what it is.
Yeah, totally.
Well, it says
with this director and that title.
Yeah.
All right.
So yes, Violent Night. It's a feel-good holiday horror comedy film. Not necessarily for the whole family.
Yeah.
But it's highly, highly recommended. And it's got a great ending. It's got an ending that isn't bleak or sad or overly saccharine or moralistic. It has it sticks the landing really well.
Yeah. And Harbor is such a great Santa.
Oh my God, he's so perfect.
Yeah.
He's so perfect for it.
For me, it's John Leguizamo. I just
Oh yeah.
the crush will always be there. It will never end. And honestly, like I really liked the art style in this film. And this is one of the few ones that I've actually seen too. So that's it's rad. Like highly recommend, even from the baby bat corner. It's a really freaking fun time. And I like the bits in it that are just kind of these callbacks to these different areas and just like callbacks to different like long storied places. Like I thought when they combined some of the this is happening at the same time when you're like, oh, okay. I didn't know you were going to combine that. And I'm like really hesitant to say anything because it just gives away too much. And I think the genuine surprise of like seeing those reveals is really worth it. Really, really, really worth it.
And we have 2 movies in this set with Viking Santa. And I love that because of the Norse roots of Santa being a variation on Odin mixed with Saint Nicholas. And that's how we kind of get our modern Santa. Saint Nicholas did a lot of the basic stuff that we know of, but he wasn't a big fat round Coca-Cola Santa Claus. But he didn't fly. He didn't have, Odin. Odin flew with his 8-legged horse. Odin gave gifts. Odin had elves that made gifts. I mean, the Santa myth is there. The pagan version, and then you just smash the Christian version together, and then you get Coca-Cola involved, and you get that Thomas Nast, big, fat, roly-poly Santa who would never stand a chance against David Harbour Viking Santa.
Oh, yeah, no way. Yeah, I'm a huge David Harbour fan now after that film.
Yes.
Like, big time.
Pretty
Definitely.
darn rad. Really,
Yes.
rad. It's an exciting one.
Okay, so that was our films. And now I want to bring us to the segment of what did we learn today?
Well, one of the lessons I learned is that my fellow reindeer brethren should not be messed with. Should not be messed with. And that we're possibly also elves, I think. Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Not sure yet. That's yet to be determined.
Yes.
And if you're elves, maybe you're not the nice kind.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't mess with Santa.
Yeah.
Like, you may be getting them all Santa, but you may be not getting them all Santa. Yeah.
You might be getting the big thing in ice.
Yeah.
From Finland,
don't drill into the
horns.
ice.
Don't drill into the ice and look for the
we learned that from The Thing. Yeah. It's a
basically
lesson.
It's Santa as the thing.
Yeah, it's a lesson as old as The Thing. It's like, don't wake the thing in the ice. It's pretty simple. So this is a lesson.
There might be 198 lessons coming your way.
Yes.
Potentially.
No.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The other thing I've learned is always carry around a walkie-talkie, because then potentially you have some kind of friendship that you can reach on the other end of that. So that's always good. I feel like that's just a good horror tip in general. If you find yourself in that situation, perhaps maybe just have one. Let's see what happens.
Yes. I think based on the description, based on the description of hosts, I think I won't be going to anyone's family dinners.
No.
Ever.
No. Check for hammers. Check for hammers and shotguns. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that they're COVID safe now anyway, but in the future, yeah.
I have a feeling that's going to make people feel, once they see that host's film, it's going to make them feel a little awkward when they're at that dinner table with those family members, and it gets kind of quiet for a second.
Yes.
What's going to happen? Like,
I learned not every family member is a nail.
True.
When you have a hammer.
Oh yeah, Baphomet likes that. That's a good lesson.
That's excellent. Wow, I'm genuinely kind of like struck. I'm shook by that one. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course.
Oh my goodness.
All right, good lessons. Everybody.
I like
good
this.
lessons.
I like this.
Can we mention one more film that we didn't get to completely review, but we both saw?
There are so many, yes.
But The Sacrifice Game just came out recently.
Yeah, it's on Shudder.
It's on Shudder. It's another home invasion, but it's a very different kind of home invasion. It's a home invasion at a girls' school.
Yeah.
In which some creeps are trying to fulfill an ancient prophecy so that they can release a demon that will give them ultimate power in the world. But nothing is as it seems.
Oh, it's so good.
Absolutely nothing.
It's such a good film.
Whatever you think is going on isn't going on. It's something else.
Yeah, it will surprise you consistently. I kept thinking, I was like, oh, it's one of these. Oh, it's not one of these films. Oh, wait, what is that? What is she doing? That means something totally different now. And the tension just ratchets up and ratchets up and ratchets up, and things just go so sideways that you are just like not even sure where the film is going to end up. And And it's got a great ending too, which you
The
can't
ending
predict.
is wonderful. The
You
ending is
can't predict the
wonderful.
ending.
Yep.
That's a
So,
nice
But
little thing
it's
to take on the holiday and just kind of
yeah.
take some time.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So if
So
you're looking for a new film to watch, we can definitely recommend.
the Sacrifice
Yeah,
Game.
Sacrifice Game.
We do have some other films that end up in that category. The one that we've all seen too. I love to,
Yes.
because I don't often have films to share, but I have one for this time around, which is Anna and the Apocalypse.
Oh, I
Yes.
know.
I
It's a
love this
musical.
film so
Mhm.
damn much. Like the TLDR, I guess, on it is like take Shaun of the Dead, mix it with a high school musical, kind of, sort of, maybe. And there's
Mhm.
a lot of interesting twists and turns in it, and it's just a delight. If you want a really good time, sit down with someone online and watch this film, because it's so silly. I remember the first
Yes.
time Violet showed me this film, and gosh, we were so drunk and so entertained by the end of it. It was phenomenal.
It was so much fun. It's such a fun film.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Even if
Love
you
it.
don't like musicals, it's one of those ones where you can be like, okay, this is just so weird and strange that I'm
Mhm.
along for the ride. And it's full of really great English character actors as well.
Yes. And I'm someone who doesn't like musicals, and I loved this.
Ah, nice. Excellent. Yeah, there are a
You
lot of films that I think we wanted to cover that we didn't. But I think in our post-show post, we're gonna give you more films to go hunt
Mhm.
down and look for. And also, I'm on Letterboxd, and I've got a big list of holiday horror films on my. So if you look me up on Letterboxd, you'll see my favorite horror films in my holiday horror list. So there's that too.
It's phenomenal. I'm
Yeah.
I'm really excited for these films, and I'm really looking forward to watching a few of these with you over our little break. And do we want to talk about our break and when we're coming back? And we're gonna release. You're gonna get this episode for the holiday, and then we're gonna see you all in the new year with
Yes.
hmm
a couple of really awesome episodes. So really excited to share those. And just yeah, hope you all have like a spooktacular time. A
Yes.
I don't know, any final words, any parting thoughts?
Yes. There I wanted to talk about we wanted to try and talk about like things that we're looking forward to,
Oh
Mhm.
not
yeah, yeah,
necessarily
yeah,
in the new
yeah.
year, but like some horror scuttlebutt kind of things.
Forgive
Um,
me. I
it's
jumped
okay.
ahead.
I've heard that there's a sequel in the works for Violent Night,
Oh, that would
and
be great.
I personally need it right now.
Yes.
I don't know anything about production timeline or any cast decisions or anything like that in terms of development, although Charlize Theron's name was mentioned, and I could just see her as Mrs. Santa personally. Like
That would be
that would
awesome.
be amazing. So whatever's happening with that, I hope it gets all the money and all the gas that it needs to
Mhm.
happen, because I
Yes.
want David Harbour back as Santa, and I want to see another film like that. It's just too good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Oh,
speaking of
and there's
sequels, oh, go ahead.
mm, oh, I was just gonna say the other thing I'm not sure if I'm looking forward to, but I'm gonna look out for it, is they're making a Lost Boys musical.
What?
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
And I mean, obviously I'm not gonna go see it, but if it's filmed, I will I'm not ashamed. I'll watch it. I mean, it's gotta be seen. If it's Lost Boys and Lost Boys canon, like kind of have to.
You
You
Like
kind of
it's
have to.
required. It's
you
kind of required.
you might
Yeah.
have to fight me for being first in line? Like
Oh my God, yes.
I'm 1,000% there. Like
Yeah,
yes. Yes, yes, yes.
nice.
Oh, to come back to the Violent Night 2, just to give everyone an
Mm.
update on that one. They're currently right now, it is in the development stage, not filming stage. So
Mhm.
they're
Ah,
all working on it and talking about it, but there's no current thing on it in place now. We can put a link to it. There's an article on Screen Rant about it.
oh,
Great.
cool.
Great.
Awesome.
Great. Well, speaking of sequels, next
Yes.
Christmas will be Terrifier 3.
Ooh,
Art the Clown coming back at Christmas.
yikes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That will,
Skip that. Like,
yeah. No, there is no way you can deal with Art the Clown. Just
nope.
Yeah.
nope.
I'll be watching it because those films are scary.
Mm-hmm.
Not a clown person, but yeah.
Well,
Plus, it's a sequel, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And they've set it up. I mean, with Terrifier 2, they've really set up an interesting mythology. It's not just a slasher thing anymore. There's a
Yeah.
real mythology they're working with.
Yes.
I mean, the first one was pretty much a slasher movie until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 takes off from there. And I don't know what they're going to do in 3, but I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
it's all the same cast. They're bringing back everybody.
Oh, interesting.
So
Cool.
I can recommend a couple of really cool Christmas books too.
Yes, that'd be great.
We've been talking about Krampus tonight. I don't have a copy in front of me, unfortunately, because it's in my storage space like everything else in my life. But it's called Krampus The Yule Lord by Brom, Brom. He is a
Wow.
great writer and a fantastic artist, and he illustrates, he paints all the illustrations in his own books. And Krampus is about the battle between Krampus and Santa, because Krampus believes that Santa has usurped Christmas from him. But it's not just about them. I mean, it's set in West Virginia, where Jesse Walker, who's a local struggling songwriter with not a lot going on in his life, sees these horrible figures chasing a man in a red suit toward a sleigh and 8 reindeer. And when the reindeer take off into the sky, taking the sleigh, the Devilman, and Santa, the down on his luck singer ends up with this sack. And Krampus tells Jesse the secrets of the war between Krampus and Santa. And so the lines of good and evil get very blurry. So I really recommend Krampus the Yule Lord to anyone who likes books, who likes reading scary stories. I mean, the English tradition, right? We have to tell ghost stories at Christmas. The Yule Lord, Krampus the Yule Lord is a really good one. And speaking of telling stories, scary stories at Christmas, I can also recommend Christmas
Upside Down.
Christmas and Other Horrors.
Oh, cool.
By Ellen Datlow. It's Christmas stories, it's solstice stories, it's Hanukkah stories. All
that's
great.
Awesome.
That looks fantastic.
Also, the cover is gorgeous.
Yeah.
The cover is beautiful. Truth be told, I have a story in here that I'm really proud of.
Cool. Nice.
A bunch of great people are in this book. I'm really happy to be with so many cool people. And Ellen Datlow is a great editor. So
Absolutely.
I recommend this book wholeheartedly.
Oh, that's
good tip.
Awesome.
Thank you for that.
That's awesome.
Sure.
So much stuff. So many
It's
things.
so good.
So much to look forward to. So many films out there. We have reindeer that are losing their mind. And I think everything is going to be on the Tumblr site, and we're going to have all of the show notes with all of these wonderful recommendations, these books, the links to everything. So everyone will have those at their fingertips, so they can just easily breeze through it and not have to think about what to watch. Just pick one a night, see what happens.
Exactly.
But from all of us here at Raised by Horror, we hope you have an interesting holiday. a delightful one for you. How about that?
Yes. There you go.
Well, I hope you all have a blood-soaked, hilarious, horrific holiday horror holiday. Because that's
Absolutely.
just,
If it can't be blood soaked, at least it's spooky. That's
Exactly.
keep it
Exactly.
creepy.
Well,
Yes.
and inspired by Swole Santa, I think it's time to just kind of
Yep.
get our glasses together, and we'll catch you all soon in the new
All
year.
right.
Yes.
If we
Happy
know how.
Christmas, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Okay, how
Bye-bye.
do we end it? Like.